This is the tale of the events before the first war in heaven, the second war and the Titan and Olympians of the third war, who they were and what happened to them. Now many do not realize that the Olympians were of a race long forgotten and hidden in rumors and myths. The origin of their lineage goes back to the second war of heaven that took place after the Great War and the Great Flood. To recap briefly, after the war in heaven and the flooding of the earth as well as the death of the mortal forms of the children of the Nephilim who were called the Rasham. The Rasham did not adhere to the laws of death as mortals do because of their heritage from their parents, who were angels sent from heaven down to earth under the command of Lucifer to watch over the earth and maintain the cosmic balance and to protect mankind. These were their top priorities officially. They were also tasked to discreetly observe mankind and pay attention to the details of their emotions and actions taken by them. They were to learn as much as they could about human emotion for reasons God did not reveal at that time, as he was so infamous for doing when sending his angels to perform duties. The only restriction God had placed on them was that they did not indulge themselves in the pleasures enjoyed and crafted by man. They were only to consume, partake and be rewarded with that which God had made, not by what man had made. Now something about angels in that age was that they were beings created without the ability to knowingly or willingly commit an act of sin, except for Lucifer because he was the only angel ever created with the gift of free will. So an angel could not even conceive the logic in choosing to commit a sinful act if brought up to them. Even I retain some of that purity, such as suicide. I cannot logically ever contemplate the act of suicide to solve a personal issue, nor can I physically put a blade to my wrist. It's as if an unseen hand diverts my strike even mid-swing. I know what befalls those who take their life and where they are sent, so if a discussion about the topic comes up, that is my only thought within my mind and therefore not a solution to any problem I may have. This subject is important for what I say next. The angels gathered after a time to discuss an idea pertaining to their special mission as the Watchers, as they became known as, of man's emotions. Azazel was one of the main supporters of this idea. He had become exceptionally skilled in both combat and a deep understanding of the angelic power they were each created with that gave them a direct connection and the power of dominion over each area of creation they were assigned to. The group of 7 angels gathered and discussed the idea of having children with the mortal women, which appeased to Azazel, for he entertained the idea of being able to impart the vast knowledge he had to someone that may understand as he did, since he would be from him. However, there was some reserve, especially from Earl, who spoke up and said that God had commanded they not embellish themselves with that which is created by man, and children were something created by a man. Then Samjazel spoke and said that they were not and were a creation of God. Azazel then said that we could use the children to teach them all we had learned of the emotions of mankind, and that God would be happy to see how wise and clever his angels had become in making such a means to display what they had learned, and the children could be their legacy to carry on in their stead once all their duties were finished and they returned to heaven. Then Astaroth spoke up and said it wouldn't have mattered because they did not have the equipment to rear children anyways. That is when Lucifer spoke up and said that was not completely true. There was a way. By passing the light of the angelic power's source that is the core of every angel, their grace, through their wings into the womb of a woman where it enact just as the seed of man does and begin the spark of life within the woman's womb. Then Bartholomew spoke and said that we could take them as wives and fall in love with the women, marry them in wedlock and thus be a union blessed by God and therefore not a sin in his eyes, then bear children with them. Now note, during this whole conversation they all tried to do this mainly out of the desire to please God. Azazel and Astaroth, Samjazel, Bartholomew and Earl looked to Lucifer for a decision, and Earl said that maybe they should ask God first. But God was not available at the time as he had other matters to address before they left to Earth and had not yet returned. Lucifer just shrugged, for he had no interest really in children nor a legacy. He felt such things were built upon pride, which was one thing he especially was trying to avoid considering the visions God had shown him of his destiny in the Book of Life. So they turned to Samjazel, who said that he feared that this endeavor they embarked upon would come at a great price and that he felt he would be the one to bear the weight of that price, but agreed upon it. Now Lucifer had left to attend to something else from that point, so I know not what happened next. I hear that they all swore some sort of binding agreement to stay upon the path of the decision they had made. I truly know not, but we were all brethren and comrades in arms at that time, each of us ready to lay down our lives for each other at any given moment. So I cannot imagine what pact would have been stronger than that. As the accounts state, Earl rushed back to the citadel of the White Throne as soon as he heard God had returned. Now, considering the time frame of events, this is when God had given Earl the message to give to Noah and had told him of his plans to destroy the world and the Nephilim children. Earl had came and told me that I was to return at once to the citadel. I was visiting my son, Mathhakiel, who was a captain of the city guard and become quite the strong-hearted soldier, like me. This was the last time I would see him. I was waiting for him to finish his duties but had to leave once I got the message before he did. I arrived at the citadel and felt a chilling shadow that seemed to follow unseen as I approached. I went into the main chamber and there was God looking over his miniature model of the world. He seemed vexed and I asked him what it was that was so urgent. He told me that he knew of the children the others had with the mortal women and showed me things that were happening upon the world at that moment upon the miniature model: wars, blasphemous worship of other statues made in the likeness of our children, and the abandonment of the temples and altars and shrines erected to God. The people were erecting new gods to worship because of the heroes and demigods' deeds to help mankind in their hour of need. I tried to say that if we were given the opportunity to raise our children properly and show them the right path to walk with their power, that all would not be lost. He erupted in fury and called them an abomination and said I must return and order the angels under my command to go forth, hunt down their own children and kill them. The hairs on the back of my neck began to stand up. Something was not right. Then he told me it was too late. Mankind had abandoned him in their hearts and the children had corrupted the world and the hearts of man, and that he had no choice but to destroy the world and start all over. I was appalled and my heart sank, but I knew what I had to do. I unbuckled my breastplate and drew my sword and said if this is what heaven had become, then I could no longer be any part of it. I renounce my allegiance to heaven. I let my sword and breastplate fall to the floor. Suddenly I felt a searing pain from behind me and a fiery sword protruded from my chest, scorching my wings. Now all this time I had thought it was Michael, the angel at the gates of Eden, had done this because of the sword and his promotion to my rank after this, as well as the tale of his defeating me, but as it turns out it was Earl who had done this. I found out later. He had betrayed his brethren and told them nothing of God's plan, delivered his message to Noah and rushed back to the citadel, for Michael could not and had never left his station at the gates of Eden. To top it off, he betrayed me by stabbing me in the back, literally. If any of us should have been cast from heaven for our sins, it should have been him. Now, to show that I am not working by anyone's agenda or my own, I shall tell you of another memory I have found within my past life recessions that strike very similar to this tale that I have not been able to place yet as to the time period or the identity of the individual within history. The memory is of an individual known as Majesta. He was an entertainer of one of the successors of the king of the gods, and he, the king, did look similar to that of Zeus, but then again so did my memory of God as well. Similar but not identical. I remember that being in the position I was granted me some mystical attributes, but I was nowhere near or even of the lineage of the king or those of his court. I remember what happened here next was centered around something he had done to his daughter, not that he took advantage of her, but something equally heinous, enough to enrage me for some reason. So one night I snuck into the king's main throne room. He was surprised to see me so late in the hour. I walked up close to him, whispered something in his ear, and then took the dagger from my waistband and slid it into the side of his abdomen, just between the last rib and the one next to it. Quickly I made a dash out the throne room and towards the main hall's door. I had almost made it to the door when the captain of the king's guard came from the throne room after me. I was reaching for the door when suddenly a searing pain from behind and I stumbled as everything faded to black. Now the reason I mention this is because this may be the true memory of what had happened, for the other tale were memories I had pieced together from the historical tales. The section of the discussion the angels had about the children and of my decision to denounce my gems were from hazy memory-like visions that always are the same and never change in any way as along with this memory. The rest of the tale I have put together by following historical accounts, tales and versions I've heard from both sides and sitting down cross-referencing searching subjects and searching for familiar topics that it seems as though I may have had associations with, such as the details of the angelic tributes. As far as I have been able to gather, the Nephilim are people who had died and had near-death experiences which, for one reason or another, were sent back from the other side and given another chance at life, or in these cases sent with specific tasks to complete. Such as myself, I remember the first near-death experience I had. I was sent back because I did not know or have the chance to know the difference between good and evil. I knew nothing of sin and had not yet been given the chance for salvation, so I was sent back to have a chance at that. However, I have had many near-death experiences since, and it seems I am unable to rest in peace now, as though stuck either to serve some higher purpose designed for me or because there was some sort of mix-up and now I cannot cross over into death. I say that because on one occasion it seemed as though God himself had heard of my plight and came to try and fix this error, yet still was denied passage. I even remember a moment when death himself had come to attempt to fix this error. I had felt all my organs suddenly no longer required to continue to function. There was no pain and I was not struggling to breath. All I had to do was allow myself to drift off and it would be done, and I could feel my heart begin to slow down, but still no panic and no pain. But then a sense of purpose entered my mind and I could not bear to think of how my wife would feel to come home and find me dead, and I knew it would tear apart her world and she most likely would die soon after from a broken heart if nothing else. So I took a breath and continued to live, but for a moment I was given that choice and still was unable to rest in peace that time of my own semi-conscious decision. Since the first time when I was 15 years old I have come close and been clinically dead, as in no pulse, all body functions had shut down, dead, 7 times now, and that is my best guess because I stopped counting at the 5th time. I've had everything from medical complications I should not have survived from to car accidents no one walks away from, to poisoning that included mercury from a thermometer mixed into a cyanide capsule, and yet still I am here. I even had an aneurysm, the vein in the side of your temple that swells up when you get angry, burst and is no longer there. Now when my blood gets pumping, instead of the vein swelling, the whole front section of my temple swells. So many times have I been to the other side, and many places I have seen within it. The experience has left me to be one of the strongest mediums I have heard of, which helps when you have enemies higher in society than you. It becomes one of those careful who you cross, because you never know who they might know, as I have made many allies both above and below. These are the things that led me to who I am among those within the darkness and those within the light. It was my decisions in discerning truth from fiction that awarded me my heavenly status, and my persistence, as well as my works upon earth. Such as the event back in 2016. Does anyone remember when the news was reporting a possible asteroid collision that they said was coming for Earth? They had detected 3 asteroids on a collision course. 2 of them were not a serious threat in size, but one of those asteroids was what they were calling a planet killer. Then it suddenly veered and changed course as it was passing by Saturn, taking a sharp right and slamming into the side of Jupiter instead, creating an explosion on impact that was easily the size of Earth. I was responsible for that, honestly, though I had been aiming for Saturn's moon Titan, but I guess I missed. Through the knowledge I had gained in projecting myself out of body, then setting that projection to recirculate the energy it was comprised of in a surging spot pushing against the asteroid, caused the physical effect to the kinetic energy built up by the asteroid's motion and altered its path of motion, since the protection of myself and the energy of the asteroid's motion were comprised of the same thing. I said I would tell this tale in the next video, so here it is. This among many others, such as the recent influencing of the riots that curbed the senseless anger of the rioters to take up arms to defend their neighborhoods, that gave the people exactly what they needed to satisfy the urge that drove them to violence in the first place, abolishment of the corruption caused by the system and police, and provided safety and protection by people they know in their own neighborhoods. Now I'm not claiming credit for all of this, only that I had influenced the emotions of many of the key figures which made this possible, because you all needed help. No other hidden intentions on that aspect.